Hello and welcome to episode number 13. Hope you've had a great week. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do share with your own networks. Come and subscribe to the show, and let's really try and grow this community. And if you feel really inspired, you can leave a 5-star review. It really does help with discoverability. And there's also the Facebook group you can come and join. All those links are in the show notes. This week I am joined by Leon Clowes. I met Leon years ago at the Drake Music Project. As it was then, it's now just Drake Music. That was back in 95, I think. I haven't seen Leon for some time, but I've been following Leon's work on Instagram, and I think it's really important to share that story with you. A lot of Leon's work is dealing with trauma, very deep, very personal family trauma, and I cannot thank Leon enough for bringing his honesty and integrity and openness to this conversation. I don't think I'm going to say any more. I think I'm going to leave it for Leon to take you through his story. So, here is Leon Clowes. So this week I'm joined by an old friend and a great artist, Leon Clowes. Hi, Leon.
Hello, Mike. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a long time.
Indeed.
So we met years ago at Drake Music back in, it was 1994.
Wow. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, now I feel old. Yeah, it is. It would be about 94.
Or maybe 95, but around then, 94, 95. Yeah. And I guess you were really into arts administration then.
Well, yeah. I mean, I got a job and we was very much making it up on the spot at that time. So it was for Drake Music Project, as it was then. Now it's Drake Music now, which was set up specifically at that time to work with physically disabled musicians using technology, because technology was still relatively clunky and new. So I think we had copies of crack Cubase, wasn't it? Yeah. And every workshop would take about an hour to set up because it was old big heavy computers that all needed packing up in flight cases and things like that. And it was pretty experimental and an exciting time, really. But the world of possibilities was kind of limited by what the technology could do, and it was often breaking down. So I was kind of the London project coordinator, so I was doing all the admin and constantly raising money, and found I had a bit of a gift for it, which was a very good skill to have, really. Yeah.
Fantastic. It was my first job in community arts.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I just had a day release from rehab to go and study with Phil Mullen at Goldsmiths College to do the community music skills certificate course. And then I kind of relapsed, and then I came after that, and my friend Alex was on the course, and he came back and said, "Oh, they're looking for people at this place called the Drake Music Project. It's a technology. You should, because of your studio experience, you should ring them up." And I remember I rang up and I spoke to you. It was on a Wednesday. I remember it so clearly, and you said to me, "Oh yeah, we start the course on Sunday. See you then," and that was it.
That's right, and I guess Claire would be running that.
Yeah,
Claire
Smith was running it,
the training, and because there was definitely a need, and there was nobody who really knew how to. There was these skills that you needed to have, which was to be a musician, to know how to use the technology, and then to be able to work with people in different community settings, and often who were non-verbal, or they'd have speech that was limited, and that was quite. Now we wouldn't think so much of that, but at that time, my mother was disabled, and people who were disabled, this is kind of forgotten unless you're in your 50s, like I am. That people were kept behind closed doors, so there wasn't really any kind of, people were quite frightened of disabled people. I think because I'd grown up with a disabled mother, to me it wasn't anything new or frightening, but there was very much that thing of. People would talk to the able-bodied person, the non-disabled person, and because they'd make assumptions about the person in a wheelchair, not having thought processes of their own, which it's I think it's a real testament to how we've collectively moved on.
Absolutely,
it's really,
fascinating. And the technology now has really moved on with it, and it's just
that was, and that was kind of in terms of my own artistic practice. I was when I went to Goldsmiths in '88, and I did a music degree there. At home, I'd been working with a 4-track machine and with a synth. A friend had a polyphonic synth. It was an Elka. I don't think anybody else had an Elka.
Wow, an Elka.
It was really bizarre. I mean, it's a very nice noise. But I stopped being a musician or an artist that in the early 90s, and had to get a proper job. I mean, I now look back at it and go, that's because I've started to get into drinking and drugs, and so to feed my habit, I needed a job. That was I've kind of, and also I started to as my intake was increasing, and partying was increasing, I was also very down on myself, so I started to lose any confidence or whatever, and I was just constantly needing a monthly wage to kind of feed my habits, as it were. So but I maintained having a job all that time, and I had quite a knack at being a fundraiser, so that was that's what kept me going. But when I came back to using music technology, it's still a whole new world to me, where I don't feel any confident, because things are so much easier, so much more intuitive. But my mindset is based in hard to program kind of sense and things like that, and it's not like that at all, really. I've missed the whole Ableton thing and whatever, and I'm just getting to grips with GarageBand and things now. So but it was the idea of working using technology in community settings in the mid-90s was really radical then. It was and quite game changing.
It was. It was clunky, and there was a lot of downtime. From time to time, things would crash. So I can't remember who it was now, but they did this equation about for every extra piece of equipment that you add, what the chances were for having it all crash. It was like really a real logarithmic thing. Just hysterical. I don't think it's like that now, because the stuff just pretty seamlessly kind of works now. And the musician we were just talking about before we started this, Lynn, I interviewed her when I went back to Goldsmiths in 2015. Wow.
So it was a bit of a survey I did of specifically around Drake music and the musicians and their practice at that time. And Lynn was like, well, I just have an iPad, and I do it on the train, kind of thing, which was really scary to me in a way, because it wasn't something I'd ever done. And the disabled musician John Kelly showed me around the things, all the kind of apps and things like that. But that was inconceivable 25 years ago, really. But
no, it's extraordinary, and that that accessibility is amazing. Actually, I must speak with John. It's good.
Oh yeah, I mean he's
on my list.
Artist. He's a lovely guy as well. He is, but he's got a lot of really interesting insight, and incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. So your career now, I mean, you've kind of moved out of administration and back into being an artist.
Yeah, I mean, I think the life of an average fundraiser, I mean, I don't mean in terms of birth and death, but it's usually about 2 years or something like that, and I probably never lasted more than 3 years in any particular job, although I would go back to ones because I was quite good at what I did, but at the same time it is monotonously boring. And you never raise enough money for the organization, and the funders don't want to hear from you because all I'm after is money and all that kind of thing. But also there is a cycle of I've got to fill the Arts Council thing in again, or for this charitable trust. So it is really, really relentlessly monotonous. So I would kind of do 3 years in mainly arts organisations, some kind of youth and social welfare charities as well. But it's the same thing, just filling in the forms to the same people and whatever. And also I was in active addiction, as we talk about in AA fellowship. So really, it was a way for me, and which was perfect for somebody who's an alcoholic, because I'm quite happy to call myself, because it's because I resented raising money for people so that they could go and do creative things, and that's of course what I actually came to London to do in the first place.
Yeah, fascinating.
Until I started, smoking weed and drinking with intent. So I kind of had enough, really, and my grandparents, who were my main carers, had passed away and had been left a small amount of money, but something that I could live off for a couple of years. And I knew I could always get a job in fundraising because I had enough experience and whatever. So I took a bit of a leap into the wild, and so my plan, which has taken 2.5 years to realise, is that I do a practice research PhD.
Right.
So. But I needed to get some kind of creative practice underway, which I did. I really began in about April 2020, because when everything shut down, I really had no excuse except to get on and start creating. Fantastic. Which would be just like doing these kind of visceral voice pieces that were about traumatic experience of growing up gay in the AIDS crisis, the family, my family of origin, and the rather difficult circumstances what I was born into, and then addiction and recovery from addiction, those kinds of things, and the kind of codependent and abusive kind of self-abusive behaviours that were going on for most of my adulthood till my late 40s. So I started making things, and because my practice was about trauma rather than I'm a musician or I'm a visual artist or anything like that, it meant that my practice became multidisciplinary. But I think I turned up to do a music degree expecting an art school education, and It took me till late 40s to really realise that that's what I was. And from a working class rural Staffordshire family to the idea that I would ever have gone to an art school was, even though I was still at the end of the grant maintained years, though it was a big enough deal that I was doing music, because I could have done something sensible like science or something like art, but music at least had that. It's got that kind of prestige, hasn't it? And it's quite hierarchical. It's quite high up in the hierarchy of proper arts. Yeah. Rather, if you play an instrument and all those kinds of things. But I didn't really play an instrument that well. I was more interested in writing songs, and they were modes of catharsis for me, and ways of. And that's kind of what I I'm revisiting. Like, I've just got a small commission from Sound and Music for the British Music Collection's LGBTQ open call. So it's great that I've won that. And I'll revisit some of the music that I made in the late 80s, early 90s, because a lot of that was about being a queer teenager and society just being down on any gay man because of AIDS, really, at that time. Yeah. But the thing that pays my daily work is that I researched that as a practice researcher at London College of Music in Ealing. So that gives me, which is great, because a lot of my work also is about trauma. And so I'm dealing with very personal stuff about the identity of my father and the impact of that on my family, and really quite naked stuff about the things I did in active addiction. And what I'm researching is about how to do that work with compassion for myself and for the audience, and treat trauma in as a subject material that's, if you look at it in an autoethnographic way, then it's balanced and it's distanced, and using kind of Brechtian techniques to kind of, rather than come and see me cut myself on stage, or which there's of course there's really fantastic live art practitioners who do things like that. I'm far too. The idea of cutting, even watching people doing blood, is horrific to me. Yeah. But it's those kind of visceral things, or that people do, and I think there's a lot of sentimentality as well over trauma. That's quite a judgmental thing to say, but if you can't pick it apart with things like satire or deflate these things, then I think these things hold a power over you. I mean, I could talk about, narcissism that has appeared in my life that I probably suffer from, but I've certainly attracted in kind of friendships and relationships and things like that. But once you start naming your oppressor as somebody who's a narcissist, then you are giving them the power.
Sure.
And I think those are the things. So I'm in this fantastic position where I get to make the work. And also, I get to kind of look at it and analyze it so that I can then dispassionately deal with it and be able to not have sleepless nights about it, or be churning up or re-traumatizing myself, or fetishizing what I'm doing for the sake of some vicarious thrill or attention seeking with an audience. That's my intention anyway.
Yeah, incredible. So tell me more about the commission. How's that work?
Well, I applied.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm really delighted because, like I said about the technology of music and its advancement, and me being 25 years behind with it, I'm really glad that Help Musicians have got me a mentor. Is this fabulous woman, Jan Pulsford, who wrote the winning British Eurovision entry, which came number 6. In 1983. It's a fabulous song.
Oh, wow.
And also Jan co-wrote with Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
So and she lives in Suffolk, and every 2 weeks I have to come up with some music, because why have I got a music mentor? And I need those things because, ironically, even though I trained as a musician, did a music degree, worked primarily with music-based charities, be those with disabled people or El Sistema or whatever, or community music projects. I just lost all confidence with it, and music is my main art form. That's always been I listen to music. That's my other interest in all different art forms, visual and performing and whatever. But when I came back into practice, the things that I'd really developed skills in were performance and writing, because you really have to write, and you have to be quite manipulative as a writer to be a really effective fundraiser. So I developed all of these skills about the exposition of kind of stories, but my music was, and still is, really in many ways quite left behind. But I've also been on a kind of skills building journey of learning how to make things in a craft sense, and I did a visual exhibition with a friend that was involved me doing watercolors and word art and photography, captioned photography about moments of shame in an active addiction and things like that. So I've had this luxury of being able to explore different mediums and pull them all together. But my approach has been, whatever the message is.
Yeah.
Message is probably not the right word, but I find the means to do that message. So that could be photography or it could be animation. But music, it's fantastic that I now have to go and revisit my music. So I'm thank goodness for the guys on YouTube who to give you the really detailed tutorials about garage bands and production and things like that. It's just fantastic, that you can go and learn these things.
What a resource. Yeah, it's amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, or fix your Hoover as well. Those kinds of things, which I've had to do once. Yeah, as well,
I'm the one having had to cast off my knitting.
You're into knitting now?
I haven't done for a while. I was knitting loads a while ago. I was knitting loads of ties for all my friends.
Really fascinating. Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because there's my AA sponsor who binds books. And he's doing this for this Orthodox. He's not Orthodox Jew himself, but it's kind of been his entry into this Orthodox Jew world, because he's been doing these it's like his thing of patience. And my friend was talking about her daughter and doing these things that are like tapestries, that are ready-made tapestries now. And I've just read Tim Ingold's Lines. So this study of anthropology about how we live our wayfaring lives and how lines in nature and design and that's part of my kind of whole approach within my own practice research. It's kind of, where are those tracks and traces and those impressions that we do on us? And so it's really interesting to me that in the last 2 days, people are telling me about these kind of meditative practices that they do, be it knitting and they all involve, you know, the tying up of lines and
How fascinating. Amazing.
So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing with the commission from the British Music Collection. Thank you very much, because those, I'll be going back to those traces that happened to me. So I was a huge fan of that second wave of electronic music, Soft Cell and Blancmange and Depeche Mode and all of the, you know, that was kind of my era. But that was performance art in many ways, and Mark Allmond was a performance artist.
Absolutely,
Polly, you know. So that was from that kind of tradition that was provocative and queer in a very kind of daring way at that time, and so that's what I was making towards the end of the 80s. That was my mode of expression, was to put there was all this dark stuff going on with not knowing who my father was, and this traumatized family that I didn't even realize I was in. And then I was, you know, my grandfather was reading The Sun, so I was looking at newspaper headlines where I saw this thing the other day that during the height of that AIDS crisis there was this vicar said that he'd shoot his son if he ever caught him.
I remember,
if he ever caught AIDS. And they actually mocked up the photo with the. I laugh about it, but it's horrendous.
Horrific,
vicar
absolutely horrific.
Pointing his shotgun at his son, saying, "This is a visual." It was the kind of messaging that was coming out about art, which, you know, that's at least one of the fascinating things about seeing coronavirus now and now the monkeypox kind of thing. At least there isn't that horrendous blame culture. So I explore some of that, and that was my re-entry into practice, was going through some of the incidences that happened at school, because I was the school gay and so horrendously bullied on a daily basis, kind of thing, you know, and the head girl told me I should have HIV positive stamped across my forehead. I hadn't even had sex at that time, you know. It was, but that's what the climate of that time.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Leaves an indelible trace, or that takes a long time to, that turns into a self-loathing and you know, as messed up kind of relationships and things like that. So those are the things I try and explore through my work, really. Is, I suppose, it's partly catharsis, but I try and do it in a distanced kind of way.
Yeah, interesting.
Way. Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of any other way to kind of explore that stuff safely than through art. You know, performing arts and being creative. You know, because there's something positive which is coming out of something so dark. You know.
Yeah. I did this thing at Snape not that long ago, which was through Britain Peers Arts, and I collaborated with a musician and filmmaker and an actor. And I created this scene that was around, because this all started for me when my mother died. Yeah. And she'd been 14 and she'd been raped by her uncle, and he's my father. Yeah. And I found this out at the age of 42. I'm 52 this year now. And you can imagine the impact of that, I mean, on me. And it made a lot of sense about, you know, my poor mother. I mean, she had multiple sclerosis for most of her adult life, and had to hold in this secret, and it had been, and just, so I've explored that in a very direct way, and I presented it. And so you get this audience coming in from nearby in Snape, which is, you know, it was quite dark material, and done in a very kind of in your face, working class, sardonic kind of way that perhaps isn't normally what you get at Snape. And though they do some fantastic stuff and very experimental music, you know, I mean, it's not necessarily kind of, this is perhaps more with, you know, like live art, or and that's kind of probably more or theatre, really, that's the world that I'm kind of perhaps more in with this kind of material. And it still riles me to this day that one of the ushers afterwards said to me, "Did that help you?" Just really furious about it. And I was like, well, why am I so furious about it? She means that really nicely, actually. And also a thing of not knowing what to say, but an exasperation, I think, because it's like, I don't want you to think that this is helping me.
No,
And then it was a really fascinating thing. Like, well, I need to think about how I'm presenting this, and
absolutely,
and what I'm doing with this, and so there's these things are always lessons for us.
Well, absolutely, because you're suddenly presenting it in the real world, rather than in your head and in a small production team. It's out there, and
I was exhausted afterwards.
I'm sure,
and I felt like I was also, this is the woo-woo side of me, but when I got back, and I'd had very little sleep all week because I'd never collaborated with three other artists, and then I'm at this huge venue, and they couldn't have been nicer and more helpful.
It's amazing.
But it was a lot of stress for me, and also just this thing of putting this thing on in front of an audience was a big deal. So I was really, really exhausted at the end of it, but I almost felt like I'd invoked spirits in my family as well, kind of thing. Afterwards, that was definitely what the night after I got back. It really felt like my father was in the room. It was very vivid, and it was and so there was a kind of those invocations and things that I think art practice is a form of ritual and magic, and and I do have firm beliefs in those things, and but I'm trying to explore how to do those things and be objective about it and be balanced, really, because I can be all traumatized about what happened or what didn't happen or what I didn't know, and all of those, I can have all sorts of feelings, but by using kind of Brechtian approaches of the Gestus technique, it's like all these different people had different. My grandmother made certain choices that I don't agree with. She withheld the secret, and I think that caused a lot of pain. But I understand why she did that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And those are the things I'm trying to kind of explore in everything that I do that's related to trauma. Maybe I am just trying to work through things. Maybe I'm just trying to help, help myself there, possibly. But
But also a very interesting piece of arts research,
Yeah, and trauma's at the root of so much, particularly music. There's and there's just been reading a book, Sensing Sound, which I could remember the name of the author, but this idea that we've been judging music as sound and the notes that are played, and actually it's the vibrational thing, and it's
totally.
And why does music make us cry? Why does this abstract noise sound have this emotional, to me, much more than looking at a piece of art or watching a film?
I think it is that, very much that vibrational quality of music. I mean, it's an expression of pure energy, and if everything is energy, getting a bit kind of,
Oh no, you're well on your wavelength.
Getting quantum physics here, but I mean, it's the music is that ultimate expression of life. It's just everywhere, isn't it? Music is everywhere, and I think that is why we respond to it so well, and it affects us in such incredible ways, and it's why I get so angry that education seems to put music more and more and more, it's sidelined, isn't it? It's at a time when we need people to be more creative than ever, the way we're going to live our lives with what's going on in the world and with resources and energy and all these things. We need creative thinkers more than at any time in human history, probably. And at the same time, people are suppressing creativity in schools, and you're just banging your head against the wall going, why? It's not acceptable. It really is not acceptable, and it makes me so cross. There's very little I get really cross about, but that's because when for those of us who participate in music and see the effects of music in communities and individuals, and your experiences that you're talking about now, and how that plugging into music, creativity, performing arts, how that actually transforms things, how it transforms your thinking, your feeling, your energy, your ability to be resilient, your ability to cope, your ability to make better decisions. It's incredible.
Oh, completely. And it's kind of it was so I mean, it is for everyone, isn't it? The music that we discover when we're 14 is such potency or whatever like that. But for me, as an adopted child, I had no sense of self. I didn't know who my father was. I didn't know what I looked like until I was 25. I really had no idea. But at least it kind of helped me have some meaning and identification kind of thing. And, and that was also a very rich time in terms of popular music when queerness was kind of, all the descendants of Bowie, be that Visage or Annie Lennox or Alison Moyet or Mark Ullman. There was this androgyny that was starting to come through that was very cutting edge at that time, really, where the art was happening in the pop charts. So, that was so critically important for me at that stage of unknownness, really. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm.
It's just fascinating. Well, I'm gonna wish you incredibly well with your commission that you've got going on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm following you closely on Instagram. It's great. I just love watching what you're up to, and I think it's just, it's really, really wonderful.
I think one of the just to finish bit is one of the things of being one of the gifts of being in my 50s and doing this is like I'm just aware there's not that much time. And so it's kind of, I'm just going to go hell for leather for it all. Do you know what I mean? It's like embrace all these opportunities I've been denying myself for many years. That's my approach with these things. And it's quite an exhilarating feeling, really. So long may that continue. And thank you. I'm just dipping in, starting to listen to your podcast now. And it's a really great series. And it's a real honor.
Thanks very much.
And great to see you as well.
Oh, likewise. It's just been far too long. We must keep in touch. And
absolutely.
I'll have to get up to the old smoke and come on have a nice coffee.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah. No, coffee and cake. That would be so nice, actually. So
I've got one more question for you.
Oh yeah,
which I'm asking everybody, which is, who do you know who I should speak to next?
Oh, okay. How about Claire Smith?
Claire Smith.
So she,
I've kind of lost touch. So you'll have to put me back in touch with Claire.
I've got to give her a ring. Actually, it's her birthday on Monday. Oh. So she's just started back with her practice. So
amazing.
Yeah. And she's I'll put you in touch with Claire. Yeah.
Fantastic, and send me all the links, and I'll put them all in the show notes as always, and so everyone can find out more about what you're up to.
Oh, thank you very much. It was so nice, really great to talk to you.
People can't see this, but I've got to say that all the way through this interview, you've been getting darker and darker and darker.
I know.
You've gone from.
Away and put the lights on. It's like I'm fading.
No, it's brilliant.
I can kind of see myself in there.
At one point, you're just this fantastic like half and half. It was like a really lovely Lou Reed album I was watching, and then now you've just disappeared completely. It's beautiful. just in time for the end of the conversation, you've gone. It's faded away.
To end here, really.
Oh, thank you. Right. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. You take care. Yeah.
Cheers. You too. You've been listening to my conversation with Leon Clowes.